Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Behind the Human. I'm your host, Mark Champagne, and it's my job to unpack the stories and mental fitness practices, keeping people at the top of their game personally and professionally. Today, we have just such a lovely human on the show, Paige Novick, who is a visionary jewelry designer and spiritual teacher who seamlessly bridges the worlds of luxury fashion and holistic wellness. Following a transformative internship at Chanel alongside the legendary Karl Lagerfeld, she established her fine jewelry and lifestyle brand in New York City, carrying forward a legacy of design excellence and a second-generation jewelry artisan. Her innovative designs have captured the attention of some of the world's most prestigious publications, including Vogue, Elle, and the New York Times, just to name a few. And what sets Paige apart, in my opinion, is her unique fusion of high-end jewelry design with spiritual wisdom, establishing her as an influential voice in both the luxury and wellness communities. And she's just a beautiful energy to be around. So thank you for being on the show and welcome.
Oh, first of all, thank you for that glowing intro. I'm going to be walking on air all day today. That's you, and
it's well deserved.
Be on your podcast. So thank you.
Well, I'll take that received. Paige, we already kind of jumped into a couple topics before we even hit record. So before we return to that and start to unpack your story and how you got to what you're doing today, I like to start every episode with basically stripping away the bios and just with can be a big question, but doesn't have to be, the who are you question. So, as we sit here today, what resonates with you? Who are you?
I always joke that I'm a multi-hyphenate.
Yeah.
I'm like a millennial in spirit. I feel like we don't have to be limited to one thing. And I think also as a creative, it's very easy to go in different directions. So for myself, I have to harness myself in a little bit. But oddly, all the different things are actually connected. So they're not disparate. They're really quite connected. So it's something that, even though I joke that I'm a multi-hyphenate, I think there's an overarching theme in what I do, and that's about empowerment. And even with the jewelry, I feel that jewelry is adornment, and adorning oneself is considered a sacred act of self-recognition. And so that aligns with my workshops and experiences, which, whether they're about intuition or the space between, honoring your feelings, intuition, self-compassion, all of that, they're also truly about connecting deeper with yourself and empowerment. So they're actually more connected than I thought.
When did you, and there was probably many moments, but when was one of the first moments that you actually remember where you truly felt like you were stepping into this place of power and empowering yourself on your journey? Do you have a moment or a series of moments?
How much time we have? I could tell you a transformative moment.
Yes.
And maybe that's not exactly what you asked. And then I could, if you don't mind, I could go into the moment where I stepped into my power, because they're related. But I was on this treadmill of, I'm a designer, but I'm really I've done my human design chart. I'm a manifester. I'm meant to innovate, to generate ideas, to, just be an inspirer and just constantly be creating and not necessarily taking things to completion. But I started out that way, but that's not how it evolved, because my business started to grow. And then I sort of lost a little bit of control, honestly, because I'm not meant to be the business person. I'm meant to be the creative. And so I was taking on everything, wearing so many hats. And I joked with you, it's like climbing up a mountain backwards in high heels every day. And I wasn't happy. And I was stressed all the time. And I was just like, I couldn't get off this treadmill. And I really believe that when we can't unblock ourselves, when we can't remove the obstacle, it's removed for us. Somehow the universe removes it for us when we can't figure out how to unstuck. And so I had this experience in 2017, I believe, 2017, 18, where I was showing my jewelry in Paris for Fashion Week. And I couldn't go. And I hired an agent to do it for me, to do the show for me, reputable. And he took my jewelry to Paris without any paperwork. and they thought it was contraband. So the jewelry was confiscated for 6 months from French customs, and I was left without an
Oh,
entire collection or anything to really any business. I was
yeah.
beyond
Yeah, and
it.
this is like hundreds of thousands of dollars
Yes,
if I'm not mistaken,
yes,
right? Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
I was left with like 30 pieces out of 250,
Okay.
and I couldn't do
Wow.
anything during my business season. It was right before holiday. It was
Oh,
a nightmare. I went to France twice to try to resolve it. Nothing, couldn't do anything. P.S. I felt that the jewelry would come back. I just knew at some point it would come back and I had to let go of it. And so I thought, okay, nobody's died here. Where's the opportunity? And at this point,
mm,
I had become certified in meditation and crystal healing. And my son was in middle school at the time. And I approached his school and said, I have this time now. I would love to volunteer and teach mindfulness to the students. And they were at the perfect age, fifth grade. They were like still kind of innocent enough to really embrace it and be open and, just super excited, not too jaded yet. And it was the
mhm.
perfect time. And my son was so proud and would introduce me. And it was the highlight of my week. I did it every week for a whole term. And the teachers wrote me a card that I still have on my mantelpiece that just like touches me so much, and how they felt that it was my teaching the kids emotional literacy, like the language,
Oh,
giving
yeah.
tools to be able to communicate with emotional intelligence. And plus, it was fun and it was just my happiest moment. And it made me realize, like, I need to do this more. So by the time, like, there was no question, like, this was my purpose. By the time the jewelry came back, which it did 6 months later, I had a different relationship with it. It wasn't
Wow.
controlling me anymore. And I decided, okay, I don't need to be in 75 stores. I could be in 20 stores. I don't need to have 250 pieces in my collection. I could have 75. And I took control back of my business and my life. And
Were you still in those 6 months, though, where alongside the meditation, were you still designing jewelry as well?
I actually partnered at that time because I had to find other things to generate income, number one, to fill my
Yeah.
other than calling lawyers in France all the time. It was great for my French, but
Yeah, yeah.
because I'm a French junkie. But I partnered with an essential oil brand to create something called Gem Story. We did a 2-year
Mm,
partnership where I infused essential oils with gemstones, and it was called Gem
okay.
Story. And I did a partnership with Madewell. We sold them at Bergdorf Goodman. It was wonderful. And then I started leading more workshops. And the small amount of jewelry that I had, I did events and trunk shows, and it was just like a different time in my life. And then when
Yeah.
jewelry came back, I was like, okay, I think now I could design what I want this to look like. And
Wow.
it's not to say that I haven't gone, I feel like I'm like the picture of resilience. At times I feel so beaten up because, just the way life is. Not every day is the
Yeah.
same. And I was saying that to you. So there were times over the past, 7 years where similar things happen where but it was never as bad as it had been, but just where I was doing too much of the stuff that is soul crushing to me. I was
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
explain to my business consultant yesterday, I was working on a spreadsheet that it would be easier to train a chicken to do geometry than it would to have me do this. So,
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing some of the detail because and this links back to, I think, what we were talking about earlier before we hit record around this just notion of this between space and also just, like, kind of being in between almost like between worlds in a way, like, you were living a certain life, running a certain
yeah.
business that for, whatever reason, it seems like kind of an intuitive universe nudge, held up your jewelry in France, but it's all like, I think it's easy for people to not know all of the in between moments in those 6 months, right? Like, just you to your point, like you said, like, you had to generate some sort of, like, income of some sort, so
Yeah.
you were doing right? You're looking at different partnerships and so forth, and in a way, like, on my side too, I feel like I've been in and out of those phases, and I'm in one of those now where there's some big, really exciting projects with, documentaries and books and stuff like that, but it's like they're coming,
Right.
And they're not here yet.
Right.
I mean, they are a little bit,
Yeah.
but it's so like, I can't just sit here and wait for them,
So they're
and
here.
that's hard.
They actually are here. You're living it. It just physically hasn't manifested it. So
Yes.
they're there.
Thank you
Yes.
for that.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Now
thank you
myself.
for that. Yeah. So what during that time, and then just since I'll stick with that, and then we'll go back just how your story kind of begun as well into this work, because having shared your human design as well, knowing what you did as for education and so forth, I mean, there's clearly some, that wasn't in alignment. So it's not a shock that you're doing this kind of work based on your human design and so forth. But in those 6 months, did you have I mean, outside of I'm assuming meditation, did you have some non-negotiable or staple practices that would help you kinda come back into trusting the journey and the path that you were on?
Yes. I mean, I always, and I know this sounds cliche, but it is something that is so part of my internal structure and how I live. It's very important to practice gratitude every day.
Yeah,
Express gratitude to the universe, to yourself. And whether there's some days, honestly, where it's hard to find something to be grateful for, but you could say, I'm grateful to be breathing. I'm grateful that the sun is shining, grateful to be
yeah,
whatever it is. And I think that is so important because when you communicate the opposite, you're calling in lack. It's You're coming
mm,
from a place of lack, and the universe will support that and meet you there. And when you're coming from a place of abundance, you also call that in. And just to be,
yeah,
I think it's so important when there's something you want in your life to embody that, and
mm,
that's where meditation comes in. It's about connecting deeper to self. And I talk about this even in my intuition workshops and self-compassion. When we are connected to self and we understand, we can accept our truth, whatever that is, doesn't mean that we have to act on it. That's when we attract what's meant to be ours. But when we're coming from a place of anger or a place of resentment, we're not going to attract what's meant to be ours, because that's not who our authentic self is. So the whole
yeah,
goal of mindfulness is to connect with self, to know who you truly are. And I think during this period, it taught me who I truly was and what I truly wasn't. And the universe, when you take that leap without a parachute, the universe will meet you there. So the fact that, I was doing something that really did not in any way like give me joy. It was not something fulfilling. Mostly it was the business stuff. It wasn't, the creativity was gone, and the universe removed that obstacle for me. And I don't know if you ever read the book, The Obstacle is the Way. And
yeah,
through
Ryan
that
Holiday.
and my practice for being grateful, I'm grateful that I'm alive. I'm grateful for my son, for my dog, for my life, all of these things. And when I connected with that truth, after, of course, I had to allow myself to feel everything I was feeling. Clearly, I mean, I'm human, I'm not a robot. I was devastated for a while.
Yeah,
And I allowed myself to feel that. And then from there, through adversity comes the stars. I think connecting with my truth, just all these other opportunities showed up for me. And when I've been in my life, when I've gone through times where came from a place of anger and I was holding on to anger, things that were not meant to be mine showed up for me, if that makes sense.
yeah,
Everything
very
is
well
a
said.
mirror and
Yeah,
reflection. And the other thing that I feel is very empowering, and this worked as well for me to recognize during this period, is that where I was in that moment was a result of decisions I made. I was not a victim. I decided to choose this agent. I decided to sell to, whatever, 75 stores. I made those decisions and they weren't serving me anymore. So without any
yeah.
shame, I recognize, okay, those decisions served me at one time. They're not serving me anymore. But if I make different decisions, I will have different results. And that's very empowering to know that. So wherever we are today is a result of decisions we've made. And if we want a different outcome, then we make different choices.
Well, and what I like about that is it's available
Yeah.
to any of us immediately, right? And especially if you come from the place of let's not judge the past decisions as part of the journey and so forth, but now for whatever the reason, we're evolving and we see an evolved vision or path that we want to take and what decisions and mindset and actions and so forth will support or best support putting us down that path, right?
Yes.
That does feel very empowering
Yeah, and then we
that we wanna
removed the
take
shame.
and
There's no
what
shame.
decisions
Okay, we
and
made those decisions. We did the best we could at that time. Well, it blocks us from being our true authentic
yeah.
selves.
So that if I'm following correctly, then, when you truly felt like you were stepping into your power, is that when your jewelry came back
Yes,
and you had this okay,
yes,
got you.
exactly, like, literally immediately. It's pretty
Okay.
interesting. Yeah.
And then, like, where did things go from there? Like, when did you really start to infuse this whole idea of energy and crystals and so forth into that work? Because from our first chat too, it's just for everyone listening or watching, like, you had to kinda debunk the crystal
Yeah,
world for
debunk.
yourself, right? So yeah. Yeah, yeah, and just what's been such a great gift of this podcast is the amount of conversation I've been able to have around things that I would have maybe 10 years ago probably just really judged hard,
Right.
right? And there's a lot of people I think, that still do that. I mean, when we can let that go and just be curious and open and learn. I would put crystals in that. I mean, astrology, there's a lot,
Of
obviously. Even
course.
a lot of the mental fitness of work, like journaling, people still like, oh, what are you talking about? And
Yeah, no,
it's literally been around since the beginning of time.
exactly.
Uh, which a lot of these things have, right? So
Well,
take us down the
yeah.
debunking of crystals and, like, how all that came to be and what we need to know and just, like, let go of also.
One thing I just want to say, because I loved what you said about, since the beginning of time, people have been working with crystal. And I think more than that, pre technology, well, actually, I think that the more advanced we become in the digital world, the more we need to look back to ancient practices and redefine them in a modern
Yeah.
context. Because before technology, before people had, the resources whether it was to get drugs, to have mental, to therapy, whatever it was they used had
Mhm.
access to. So since the beginning of time, ancient cultures have used essential oils. They've used, plants, plant medicine, um, crystals, whatever
Mhm.
they was available to them. And they found ways to work with them to bring forth balance in mind, body, and soul. So we're running to therapists every week,
Yeah.
It's wonderful. I feel that the more advanced we go and deeper into this like whole world of technology, which, obviously I'm a big believer in, but you have to balance it with something
Yeah.
that's rooted in nature, rooted in just about being with yourself and not a distraction, because so much of technology can be a distraction from yourself. So all of these,
Yeah.
I believe, routines and rituals bring us back to ourselves. So, but anyway, so crystals. Well, once I became really well versed in mindfulness and started when I started my practice, and the deeper I went, the more mindful I became of the stones I was choosing. And that was really
Mm.
interesting to me because I never thought so much 10 years ago, as you said, about crystals. To me, it was like the hippie movement sort of sold us a false bill of goods that crystals will change our lives. But I was fascinated by the stones that I was drawn to, and I was like, I work with gemstones, like, I wanna understand more about this, and kind of aligns with the meditation. It's all part of these alternative practices. So I took a really incredible crystal, healing course, and I was expecting and hoping that would be very woo-woo, kumbaya, because 'cause I'm a Libra, and then it's, like, all about that, and it was
Yeah.
nothing like that. It was all about earth science and metaphysics, and it
Mm.
really, really dry. It was not my best subject in school, and I had to kinda, like, take a few deep breaths, but I dove in head first, and what I learned was really transformative. It wasn't at all what I expected. I learned that crystals have been under the Earth's surface. They're the survivors. That's what I always talk about in my workshops. They're the survivors, and they've been under the Earth's surface, and they have lived through it all, molten lava, storms, high tides, like hurricanes, you name it. And so there's something very beautiful about that. And they have
Yeah.
inclusions and they have they vibrate at different frequencies from being under the earth's surface for so long. And that depends on, it's informed by the color, the cut, just the whole way the composition of the crystals are. And so before technology, people learned how to harness the energy of these vibrations and these frequencies. And even today, crystal quartz, which is the highest vibrational stone, is used in all forms of technology, from clocks to calculators to computers to credit cards, because of the vibrations. Think about a crystal quartz mechanism in a watch. So I like to think of crystals as the tuning fork, and our body is the instrument. And that is very key, because the tuning fork will align with the instrument, right? To make it hum, to make it play perfectly. A crystal will align with your energy centers to amplify whatever thought you program in them. And for me, when I learned that, that was transformative. In other words, all the magic comes from us. The crystal's vibrations will accelerate that. They will amplify it. But if we're not coming from a place of positivity and a place of abundance, language informs thought, right? Thought is informed by language. It's all connected. We can't do something before we have a thought, right? So they're all where the mind goes, the energy flows. You're going to water weeds versus flowers. It's so, where are you putting the focus? Is it in the positive, or is it in the, lack mentality? So I always talk about how, if we're going to charge our crystals or meditate with crystals or program them, we always want to come from a place of positivity and abundance. So language is so important, how we speak to ourselves, with or without the crystals. So learning this to me was so critical, because I had never heard anybody say this. It was always like, carry crystals around, put them in your home. Their vibrations will, amplify your life. They will, either quiet the mind or energize, but didn't realize that it's not the crystals. It all comes from us. So think of
they're the amplifiers.
distance. That will help get you there quicker, but they're not going to do the work for you.
Yeah. What did you learn from some of the ancient wisdom or traditions with crystals and whatnot that maybe we're not aware of that was helpful for you?
I love this question. So we have 7 chakras, 7 energy centers in the body, starting with from the root of our feet, the root chakra, our sits bones, up to the crown chakra at the top of our heads. And these chakras in Sanskrit, the word in Sanskrit is chakra, energy center, but it literally means wheel. And the theory is that, again, ancient wisdom believes that the theory is that when everything is in flow, those days that you just wake up and it's like, we're well rested, and then you catch the train on time, or whatever it is that you're doing. Have you're just like, my day's in flow. So the theory is that
it's the opposite of this week.
Right, exactly. Not when Mercury is in retrograde, but every other when it's not. The theory is that the wheel is flowing smoothly, when everything is in. But then there are days when we feel off, like this week, when you're just like, as I mentioned earlier, like when there are hiccups and little bumps in the road. And so the theory is that the wheel gets stuck. And when it gets stuck, how do we unstuck? So the wheel, how do we unblock that? So we can tell by tuning into ourselves where in our body we're feeling that. So ancient wisdom would use crystals to bring ourselves back into balance, mind, body, and soul. So for example, a day that you're feeling particularly anxious, and you feel that in your solar plexus, which is 4 inches above the belly button. And the color and crystals that are associated with the solar plexus are citrine, all forms of yellow. And if you can recognize that that's where you're feeling the butterflies, and you can use a crystal will amplify, as I mentioned, whatever you're feeling. You can meditate. You can even visualize the crystal if you don't have a crystal. But first experience, when you're in flow, your solar plexus allow you to experience power and self-confidence and joy. Think of happy faces. They're yellow, smiling faces. When you're off balance, that's when you feel the butterflies, the anxiety, the self-doubt. So you want to, with every breath, you want to inhale self-confidence, empowerment, focus, joy, and then you want to release with every exhale self-doubt, insecurity, anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's just, and also with your breath, just the act of breathing will break up the parasympathetic nervous system. So
Yeah.
that's the first part. You can do 8 inhales and 8 exhales, longer exhales. You've broken up the parasympathetic nervous system. So you have already disrupted that moment of anxiety. And then you can
Mm.
start to mindfully start your visualization and just always be present. And so in my workshops, I incorporate different modalities from working with crystals to the breath work to mindfulness meditations, and really communicate that it's about when you're experiencing that to be present, meaning to find the space between. And that's what we
Yeah.
talked about, which is honoring what you're feeling and not dismissing it, but not letting it paralyze you either. So you want to find the space in between that. And that's how you can really work with crystals.
That's beautiful. And I imagine this is where, at least where I can see where your jewelry and your pieces serve as like just a beautiful integration to what you're talking about. A, with the crystals or the gems that are already in the actual jewelry, but the fact that it's like a physical visual reminder as well,
Yes.
right? When seeing what's on our body. I mean, I'm a fan of mechanical watches, and for me, there's always a story behind it, and a reminder like the one I'm wearing right now is just took a lot of effort and a lot of aligned effort, I guess you can say, and action. So, when I'm feeling like, things just aren't happening or there's something off or whatever, I'm reminded of, well, just take a couple steps in the direction that uh supports the path and so forth. And this is a reminder that that works, right? And I can
Absolutely.
just imagine, like, with your pieces, it's like at a whole other level because if you've got that infused energy already
No,
in
thank
there.
you.
So how's that been, and what's that look like when you're working with clients? I assume one to one with this as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, the thing you were saying about, for you watches, whenever I talk about adorning yourself as a sacred act of recognition, I propose that in the mornings when you leave the house and you're getting dressed and you put on your jewelry, set an intention. I do that every day, even if it's 5 seconds. I'll put on my
Yeah.
necklace like today, I'm wearing malachite with a pearl. Malachite is about new beginnings, it's heart chakra. Think about
Mm,
green, like nature. It's everything is like changing and evolving and growing. It's also a stone of creativity. So I choose what I want to wear based on the intention that I want to set for the day. And then it's a
yeah.
reminder every time you pass a mirror or now see myself Nicole, it's a reminder
Yeah.
of your self-worth because again, it's an act of self-recognition, but also your intention. So I think that's a beautiful way of honoring yourself
Yeah.
in my,
Well,
yeah, I'm sorry.
and I just wanna pause you there. Sorry for interrupting, because I think this is such an important point, because the contrast of what you're talking about is we are getting all of the other opposite reminders nonstop all the time, almost 24/7, with social media, news headlines, all of this kind of stuff, or, sometimes our negative self-talk and so forth. So, you might be, some may be thinking, depending on where you're at in your path, and like, oh, okay, I need the reminders, but like, why is that really valuable? Well, I think this is one of the big reasons why it's very valuable, because we need to over index on the other side of
Yeah.
positivity and like putting out the intentions that resonate with us and not letting outside factors control our destiny,
Well,
right?
that's true power because we can't
Yes.
control what others do, but we can control how we respond and we control how we behave and how we act. And so, to your point, just taking a moment to pause, it doesn't have to be an hour, you know,
Yeah.
just to pause to you know, remind yourself of what you're grateful for. Set the intention. Like it's very important because we could be in the opposite of that is fight or flight mode. We all know what that feels like. And the minute we get into
Yeah.
fight or flight mode, we are disassociating from ourselves. We are disconnecting. So
Yeah.
it's very important to counter that with these moments. And they could just be moments, or setting a
Mhm.
ritual in your day, walking in nature. I mean, I live in New York City. It's not so easy to walk in nature, but I'm about 5 minutes from Madison Square Park. And every morning I go out and I walk. Either I'm walking my dog or I'm taking a walk, and I'm going to one place that I love for coffee because it's like a community there. And
Hmm.
it's very important to counter all of the noise that we have with these moments of intention and quiet.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
And what I was going to say about the fine jewelry is
Yeah.
there are no right angles in my collection, and that's intentional. Sort of my hashtag
Okay.
right angles. And I feel
Yeah.
that my jewelry is a physical manifestation of my own ethos and my own journey, which has been very curvilinear, very fluid, constantly evolving. And it's not just me, it's humans. And we're not defined by our past. We're not defined by any emotion that we're experiencing. It's not happening to us, it's happening through us. And as human beings, every day, and I said this to you this morning, is an opportunity for growth, for evolution, for something new. And with my jewelry, they're all curvilinear, and they just have a fluid
Yeah. Flows.
spirit that just, I think, aligns with my own personal journey and mindset.
Ah, so how does your business in present day feel to you today? Like, how is it different than what it felt like before? Because I think you're a very humble person as well. Before, correct me if I'm wrong, but before the jewelry was held, or around that period, it's not like your business wasn't successful. I mean, I was reading different articles and whatnot. I feel like one of my favorite humans as a musician, John Mayer, had bought in
Yes.
something from you at one point. Like,
Changed
it's not.
my life. Yeah,
What's that?
changed my life when he bought that. That's how my business
Oh, did he?
started.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. So, I guess just my point is that the business was doing well. It There may have been some things out of alignment that you now know, and you followed that path, and it's evolved to where you're at right now. But I guess how does it feel different for you? And like, what what does the business look like today for you?
Well, going back to what you said about I was doing well, I mean, how do you define well? I was not happy.
Yeah,
I felt
good
like I was
good
out of
distinction.
control. I felt like the
Yeah.
stores owned me. And
Mm,
it really depends on how you define success. In my mind, it was not successful, because
yeah. Yeah.
I felt imprisoned. And
Yeah.
um, now I feel
Thank you for
free.
sharing that.
So that's how I define it. Now I feel
Yeah.
free. It doesn't mean that every day is different. And I believe that with a small business, you have to approach it every day like it's a startup. What
Mm,
are we going to do differently? Don't get attached to things. Don't get attached to working a certain way. Um, be emotionally agile. I think that is so important. Getting out of your own way. That is, for me,
yeah.
critical. Getting out of your own way. And so every day you have to approach it with a fresh set of eyes, a new set of eyes. What works, what doesn't work, and not be attached to anything. I have one thing, I have no ego in my business. Like, doesn't
Mm,
sell out. I'm not going to be attached to it. Very often the things that I like
yeah.
most don't sell. But so that's one thing, really just approaching it differently. But you had said something earlier that resonated that I wanted. You asked when I truly felt like I stepped into my power. And
Yes.
that was one element of it when that happened, because I was able to redefine the business in a way that, resonated for me. But when I truly stepped into my power is when I overcame a huge obstacle. And I don't know if you ever read the book, The War of Art.
Yes.
You have.
Yeah.
Okay. It's one of my
Yeah.
favorite, Stephen Preston. So she talks about, I remember he was interviewed on Oprah, and she said, "What is a successful day for you?" Like, kind of almost like what you asked me. And she said, "Is it when you've written like a great chapter in your book?" 'Cause he's an author. And he
Mhm.
said, "No, not at all. A great day is when I've tackled something that I've resisted for
Ooh.
so long."
Yeah.
Powerful, right?
Yeah.
So for me, and this is very personal, but you know, being a creative, numbers, spreadsheets, all of that give me anxiety. They always have.
Mhm.
And when I was married, my ex-husband ran my business and he handled the finances. And I was okay with that because I wasn't interested. It wasn't my thing. And then when we divorced, I had to take that on. I had to take on that whole part of my business. And that for me was more terrifying than being a single girl in New York City.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah, it was terrifying, that more than anything. And so little by little, I had to get over that fear and own that part of myself without shame and embrace that, we're all shadows and light and doesn't make us good or, it's all part of who we are of being human. And I had to embrace that part of myself and little by little start to get over that fear. And
Mm.
today, 4 years later, I am aware of every single penny that's coming in, that's going out, every bill. My credit score has soared. Like I own it now. And I'm not saying it's my
Yeah.
favorite part of the business. I don't want to be an accountant,
Yeah.
but I have control
Just to
of,
be clear.
yeah, to be clear, um,
Yeah.
no pivoting here, but
Yeah.
I'm in control of it. And
Yeah.
before I just avoided it. And that is so much more painful, the avoidance.
Yeah.
So I resisted that. And that to me is true power. So that's where I feel the freedom.
Mm. I love that.
Maybe that was TMI, but
Yeah, no, not at all. I think it's very, very insightful and helpful. And also, as you're saying that, you'll see once I would send you a copy of the book. Like I'm a huge fan of just really good reflective questions. I mean, that's kind of my language. And as you
I'm
were speaking,
well.
and yeah, okay, good. I this is why I feel like you'll enjoy the book. And when you mentioned Ryan Holiday and Obstacle is the Way, I mean, he actually had a huge part in the way this book is structured.
Oh,
So
oh,
there's a lot of alignment there.
those.
But I'm going on a tangent. When you were sharing the story, what I was thinking about and what I wrote down is, for me personally, it's like what am I resisting? Right? And what am I, scared of or puts me in anxiety loops and so forth, and to like, I wanna spend some time with that question because I think we all have that.
We all have it.
We all have those. Exactly. So, thank you for sharing that.
And
I think it's really valuable.
don't be afraid of what comes up because doesn't mean
Yeah.
you have to act on it. That's the
Yeah.
thing. And if you do, it could be transformative and magic happens. But
Sure.
just letting yourself feel and recognize what that truth is so powerful.
Yeah. So what does for just because I mean, I'm curious, and I'm sure people listening are curious as well, like, what does an average day look like for you as a creative and someone who's running, her business and, like, the work that you do? I know it obviously probably, oscillates and there's different days, of course, but on average, like, how do you structure your days, from a creative perspective or in your practices and so forth? Like, what does that look like?
This is gonna turn anybody off who wants to go into the design world, so I'm giving just a heads up
Disclaimer
here.
alert.
This podcast is
Yeah.
gonna end right now. Um, every day is different, I will tell you that much,
Yeah.
but there are certain practices that I do that ground me. So as I
Sure.
mentioned, gratitude practice in the morning, walking, taking a walk outside, going to my favorite cafe. These are the things I start my day. I have to get up and get out. It's just I need to, like, no
Yeah.
matter the temperature. Um, so I start that. And what I find, it's very challenging as a business owner and the person who runs the business and being creative to switch back and forth. So I can't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So I try to, thanks to the war of art, tackle what I'm resisting, which is always more of the logistical operational stuff that I may not want to do, but some of it I have to do. I don't have a choice.
Mhm.
So I try to get that over with first because then you kind of own your day. And then
Yeah.
again, I think it was Scott Galloway who said, if you're an entrepreneur and you're not hitting your head against the wall every day, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like putting out fires, things that come up, and you have to really be able to pivot. And again, it's the emotional agility. Like, okay, I'm working on this, but this thing has come up. Okay, now I have to prioritize. And it's a lot
Yeah.
of like intuitive, like, okay, is this, I think setting priorities is key. And I'm such a tactile person. I carry around like old school notebook. I don't do notes on my phone. I have to like write.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll journal if I need to, but I always write in the morning or even sometimes the night before what I have to get done.
Okay.
And I kinda
So not like a morning pages setup, more of a,
I'll do that on
like, organizing.
yeah, just organizing. I'm
Yeah,
not naturally organized at all. I work very hard. I work harder than
sure.
most to become, and I feel like I've overcome a lot of, like, the ADD I probably had growing up that was undiagnosed.
Yeah,
But, so I know what I need to do to stay organized, and I have to write I need it in front of me. The other thing is things that get scheduled that get done. So if I know that I need some self-care during the week, whether it's exercising or whether it's meeting a friend for lunch or doing something for myself, I put it on the schedule. Like, I would
mm,
physically write a schedule on Sundays, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, everything in front of me. I need
yeah,
that to stay kind of focused and clear. Um, so I try to get this stuff over with that I don't like. And then
yeah,
I like to dedicate from like 3 to 5 p.m. when I can, my creative time. Very often it's on
okay,
the weekend, Saturday morning, I like sit at my one of my favorite places and I'll sketch, I'll work on doing some presentations, sometimes at night. One of the things
okay.
that really calms me is I love to like do fashion illustrations. I'm
Mm,
certainly not skilled, but they're very free form and gestural, like my jewelry. Everything is very
yeah,
gestural. And that's like
it primes your mind,
it primes
I
my
imagine.
mind. I'll send you something, you'll see what I mean, and
Oh,
it's
please.
my meditation, it's my therapy, and at night, I'll just be sitting there doing that, and if something beautiful comes of it, great. If not, it's just a way of kind of expressing myself.
Yeah,
So days are different. I meet with my business consultant once a week. We have like a session and we just like crank it out and get stuff done. And we're doing a rebranding now and refresh on the website. It's a really exciting and fun time. I feel very
mm,
energized.
I love it. I love that, because I think, we hear and a lot of people structure their days to leverage the early morning hours or the morning in general for their most creative work or strategic thinking and so forth. Which again, I, I don't think there's a prescription or recipe
No,
for, like, everyone's different. But what I do like what you're bringing up is, at least what I'm hearing, is by tackling some of those things that are just necessities to the business. You're blowing out potential mental clutter that's going to
that,
hold
that
you back later on at 3 p.m. or whatever it
that's
is,
exactly it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll never,
Oh,
funny, I never want to get up and start designing because that's like almost the treat for me. That's the luxury. So I want to give
ooh,
that to
yeah,
myself later in the day. And I don't need the same mental acuity because it's just so visceral. It just comes like it flows from me. But
yeah.
I need the mental acuity because I am more of a morning person. I need to get that done first thing.
It's fascinating. I mean, you can see you've got my mind spinning.
Oh, thank you.
I think I'm gonna adjust some things on my side as well, as that really resonates to what you just said.
But
I mean, I can.
then there's no formula.
We're Yeah, yeah, I agree, and that's the whole point of this show too, like, especially with the practices and the mental fitness, is it's not to say, "Hey, get up at this time, do this, do that," and sure, if you do some of those things, you probably feel good, but it's not sustainable
No,
if it doesn't resonate with you,
that's
and
it.
I just want to put out as much as possible in conversations like this so that, someone on the other side, kind of like what I'm doing with you right now, is, oh, I can take that little piece and integrate it or slightly adjust what I'm doing because it resonates. And then we're just more likely to stay consistent with it.
Exactly. Yeah, because if you're gonna, even with exercise, if you don't like I don't like to spin. So there's so many other things I could do just because,
Yeah.
everybody's talking, everybody's doing it. It's Soul Cycle. I was never that girl. And I
Yeah.
aimed myself for so long. And I was like, no, but I love running. I need to my boyfriend jokes, I have no earth in my chart. So I need my feet to like touch the ground. That's the kind of,
Yeah.
I don't like anything
Yeah.
like not making contact with the earth.
Yeah. But it's a good point. It's just because you don't like to spin doesn't rule out moving the body. And
Exactly.
it's no different with the mind, right?
Yeah.
If you don't like to meditate, well, then don't
So,
meditate. Do
right. Take a
something, do
walk.
some breathing, do something else. Yeah.
One quick thing I tell people who are like, I can't meditate. I'm like, okay, then when you're in the shower, be in the shower. Don't be thinking
Yeah.
about what happened yesterday or what's going to happen later or your to do list. It'll be waiting for you, I promise. But just be in the shower. When you're stirring a pot of pasta, like, be in the moment. When you're brushing your
Yeah.
teeth, it's just about being present. So it doesn't have to be a
Yeah.
formal practice.
Oh, Paige, you are one beautiful gift to this
Oh
planet. I
my
am
gosh.
so
Thank you.
but no, I'm just so grateful that our lovely mutual friend Michelle Murphy connected us.
Miss Murphy, we love
Who
you beyond,
oh,
beyond.
we
You're
do, we
sick.
very much do. And for listeners, Michelle is on the show as well. I want to say maybe probably 10 or 15 episodes back from when this one will air, but just search her and we had a lovely chat. And Paige, is there anything, any kind of final remarks that you'd love to leave us with? I mean, I feel like we need to do a part two at one point. It's like it almost feels like we just scratched the surface. There's so much more, but I want to respect your time, of course.
I will share this one thing because it was kind of life
Yeah.
changing for me and it's quick, but I was doing
Yeah.
an intuitive workshop at the Mayflower recently at the Well, and it was on intuition. And I ended with this, and something I tell myself as well when I do these experiences, I'm in there with you, I'm doing it as well. But one way to really hone in on your, or like flex your intuition muscle, to flex that, because it
Mm,
is, the more we flex it's, the more we practice, the stronger it gets, is anytime, how sometimes we have an instinct or a quick urge to make a generous act, do a generous act. You're in a store, you see something a friend will like, and you're like, oh, I want to buy this for her. But then you second guess it. Oh, her birthday's not till, August, or,
yeah.
I want to do this for this person, or I want to call them, and you don't. This is a perfect way to practice intuition. Do it. Don't
Yeah.
overthink it. If you have, and I've been practicing this myself. If I have, an instinct to do something for someone, I just do it. And
I love that.
I think that's a really beautiful way to start practicing tuning into your own intuition. You'll never say,
Well,
wish I hadn't bought that person a gift.
no, and that's the thing. It's the beautiful gratitude loop, essentially. I mean, like you said, you'll never regret that. They'll feel great. They're gonna express that back to you. You
Yeah,
feel great. It just and it's coming from an authentic place. Like that's the other
exactly
big
it.
one. It's just a lovely, lovely practice.
You.
Um, oh, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for your time.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for just trusting your own intuition and stepping into your own power, because like the ripple effect of what you put out into this world through your work, your workshops, your jewelry, all of it. I mean, you know this, but just a friendly reminder, it's exponential, right? Like what others are putting out and the impact they're having in this world is not far it's not far removed from maybe one of your pieces that has really touched their lives. And
Thank
that's,
you.
I think that's really something to be grateful about, and thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you for having me and for this beautiful past hour. I will be walking on air for the rest of the day. So thank you.